So if your UCAT is approaching shortly, I'm sure you're all just as worried as I was this time last year about how you were planning your studies and if you were doing enough and if you were doing it fast enough on the approach to your exam. So I sat the UCAT last year and I got a score of 2,830, and I'll let you into how I did my plan. So I'll get into this straight away. So I bought Medify on the 1st of June and I booked my test for the 25th of August. This is a lot of time. I'd almost say it was too much time. So I bought it on the 1st of June, which is about 3 months before my test started, which is, to be honest, way too long. I should have bought it a little bit sort of sooner. And I didn't really look at it much throughout the entire month of June. So I did light work, maybe 20 minutes a day max, if that, most days, because I was working full time at this point and I was just familiarising myself with the questions.
So for reference here, the yellow thing means that I'm just doing regular sort of day-to-day study. The blue circles mean that I'm doing a mock, and the blue lines mean that I'm reflecting on the mock. Thank you.
At this point, around the start of July, I started working a little bit less and studying a little bit more. So the thing I did straight away in July is try to familiarise myself more with some timed questions. So Medify has a good thing where you can do timed questions and untimed questions. So for about the first week or two, sort of, I would say, of July, at this point it was 8 weeks to sort of 2 months before the exam, I did timed and untimed questions, getting familiarised with the questions and just really going through them and getting a feel for what the sort of different question types would be like, as opposed to just the sections. In this period of time, I also did maybe, I think, 1 or 2 mini mocks, maybe a few of each section in this week or so, if that. I sort of am upplaying how much I studied at the start. I didn't really do much at all. So about 6 weeks before my exam, I did my first ever full mock. So by this point, I had sort of familiarised myself with the different questions. I'd seen most of the questions that come up and I knew what each section entailed. With each mock, it's important to sort of go into what I did after each mock. So I would do the full mock, which I can't remember how exactly long it takes. I think it's maybe like 2 hours. So on the first day, I would do a full 2-hour mock. I would get my results and I would look through it very briefly. I wouldn't do anything else the same day. I would look at my result and I would leave it. I would start going through the sort of analysis, is what I called it, on the day and the next day. I would take a full day off the next day after doing a mock just to look at the questions. So in order to analyse the questions, what I did was with Medify, it gives you a full screen of your score, your breakdowns of sections, how long you took. I would just take a screenshot of this full page and I would paste it into a big document on OneNote. It's quite like Microsoft Word. It's a little bit better, I found, for pasting photos in. So I did this with every single mock I did, and the day of and the day after the mock, I would go over it. I would write how I felt about it. I would write how I found the questions, if they were particularly hard, if I found them easy, how my timings went, and I would sort of screenshot some difficult questions and put it in. I can do a full other video on the analysis of sort of mocks and how to get better at them for the next mock, if you'd like. I can put that in as well. But that is essentially what I would do. I would do the mock. Straight after the mock, I would analyse it, and the day after, I would analyse it as well. I would take a day off and just do some light study and light analysis. I did find that reflecting and sort of looking at what I did wrong and what I could do better was definitely valuable for my time. I would definitely recommend doing this. Don't just bang out a mock every single day initially. You need to learn where you're going wrong so that you can get better. So after my first mock, about 6 weeks before my exam, after that I just did some more light study for another week, until 5 weeks before my exam. So 5 weeks before my exam, I then did the same thing again. I would do the mock 5 weeks exactly before my exam. Then straight after, I would analyse it and analyse it the next day, doing the same analysis that I mentioned before. And then after that, did another week of just general study. I was ramping it up a little bit at this point because I knew what I was getting into. I was pretty familiar with most of the questions at this point. There was obviously still stuff that I didn't know how to do, and there was obviously stuff that I still would refuse to do. That's fine, you'll all do this as well. It's not that big a deal, just skip questions. And then around 1 month before my exam, so 4 weeks before the exam, I did start to ramp it up. So what I did was I would do a mock, and then the next day after, I would do a day of analysis and some light, just untimed questions. Say for example, on the 25th of July, so exactly 1 month before the exam, I did a mock. I would only do the mock and do nothing else. Maybe some light practice before to warm your brain up, but just do the mock. Focus on that for the day. Treat it like the exam as early on as you can do. I did this. So a mock, a day off, a mock, a day off, a mock, a day off. I did that for 2 weeks. So for 2 weeks, I did a mock every second day, with each day off analysing the questions. So I found at this point it was putting me in good stead. I knew exactly what the exam would feel like. I would sit with my computer, I would have the keyboard that I mentioned in the previous sort of quantitative reasoning videos, where I mentioned getting a keyboard. I've got a keyboard with a number pad. I would have the full thing, so I could use Alt and N, I could use Alt P, Alt flag, guess it, whatever. I could use a number pad. I was doing this for about a month before the exam just to purely get used to it. So 2 weeks before the exam then, what I did was a mock every single day, and I would analyse it in the same day. So at this point I stopped working, I told work that I wasn't able to work anymore, and essentially I did a mock, then analysed it every single day. Did this for I think about a week and a half, 9 days, just until there was maybe 5 days before my exam. It was very intense at this point. I was really struggling with sort of not being able to socialise, not being able to do things that I really enjoyed, because majority of my day was taken up by the UCAT, and I'm sure most of you will find this out as well. It's very intense at some points. You do have to give yourself time off, and you do have to use coping mechanisms that you've got yourself. So from this, I worked really hard for about a week straight. I did a mock, analysed it every single day. I got very burnt out. So what I did was I took a day off 5 days before my exam. I took a full day off and I did absolutely nothing. I couldn't bear the thought of doing any UCAT study. I didn't want to do the UCAT. I didn't want to sit the UCAT. I was so sick of getting sort of at very mediocre scores, ones that wouldn't get me a place in medicine just weeks before my exam. I found it really difficult, and I found it really disheartening. So I took a day straight off. Then after that I had 5 days until my exam. So on the 21st of August, at this point my exam was on the 25th, I had about 4 days of study left. I did a full mock and analysed it again. So I just threw myself straight back into it on the 21st, full mock and analysed it in the same day. Then I had 3 days to go, and I realised my quantitative reasoning is absolutely awful. Like, it was awful. I was getting shocking scores, like 300, 400, 500, 3 days before my exam. So I forgot about mocks. I'm not doing these anymore. I can get decent scores in all the other sections, but my quantitative reasoning is shocking. So I focused purely on quantitative reasoning. I looked at all the different question types you can get, and I did multiple of them over the next 3 days. I think this is the main reason why I got the highest score in quantitative reasoning. I figured out how I could work it out for myself, how it worked for me, and how I would do it properly in the exam. I would actually recommend doing this as well. If you have a question, sort of a section that you are particularly struggling with, just focus on it solely before the exam. So the day before the exam, I actually did very little work. You'll hear this a lot if you speak to anybody else that's at the UCAT. It is actually quite good to have a day off. Let your brain sort of rest and reset and just relax a little bit before the big day. When you can do this, you can then wake up feeling fresh the next day, not like you're burning out at all. I would recommend doing this. I did light, very light, maybe half an hour max of just untimed questions, very relaxed, picking up patterns, writing down everything I saw, as I always would, just the day before the exam. The day of the exam, I'm going to make a video about this separately, because a large part of the UCAT score is purely down to your mental health and your mindset on the day. The day of the exam, I woke up, I knew exactly what I had to do. I did, again, some untimed questions, I did one set of untimed questions from each section the morning of. I had a book, I don't think I have it on me, the 1,250 questions. It's not even a good book, but I just had it with me, and I took it with me to the test centre, and I did light reading on the way. Just, to be honest, I think it was just an anxious thing. I was just reading through it, not even really answering the question. And I did this sitting outside the test centre, and I put it in the locker of the exam. So that is how I studied for the UCAT. I gave myself realistically about 6 to 8 weeks, I would say, of real study. Towards the start, I wasn't really doing much. I basically wasted a month of Medify subscription, and I didn't need it at all. And I would recommend doing roughly the same. Obviously, everything works differently for everybody individually, but that is a rough basis of how I did it for myself, just in case it helps any of you guys. I will have put, hopefully, the months over the screen when I'm talking about them, so you can get a little bit more of an insight, because I do feel like I'm blabbing on about nothing. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.